everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
Graffiti changed my life, as it does for many of us. And with Thanksgiving right here around the corner, I mean, at this point in which you guys are watching the video, Thanksgiving kind of passed a day or two ago, but for me, it hasn't happened yet. Well, by the way, happy Thanksgiving to anybody who's celebrating it. So I wanted to talk to you guys about how graffiti changed my life, what it did for me, and why I got into graffiti in the first place. And I'd like to hear the same for you guys. Why did you guys get into graffiti, and how has it changed your life? Has it changed it for the better or for the worse? Because I know for me, kind of did a little bit of both. And because, you know, we are around Thanksgiving, it got me thinking about this specific topic, and I was thinking about my origins in graffiti and making a video on it, because as a lot of you guys know, as anyone who's like gotten their hand on a can or a marker knows, this community, this culture, it can be amazing. It can save you from really dark places in your life, from a real low in your life, but it can also be the thing that puts you in that darkest and lowest point in your life as well. And I figured for that reason, this would be a pretty dope video to talk about, because I don't think people outside of this community really understand or could relate to why it is we do what we do. So hopping into this topic, as a lot of you guys know, I got into graffiti at a very young age. Granted, at that young of an age, everything I did was garbage. In fact, I spent like the first few years just copying my brother and my dad. So at that age, I was still in elementary school. I wasn't catching spots just yet, but I was certainly practicing and trying to learn a thing or two from my dad and my brother. And at this point, for me, art was just a way to play. That's really all it was. And graffiti fell into that category because I also really enjoyed drawing things like Spider-Man and trying to draw my favorite Pokemon at the time. Things of that sort, you know, cartoons, comics, and then also I had this other thing, graffiti on the side. So the interest was there. And I remember one of the very first instances of graffiti that really hooked me and stuck in my mind, aside from my dad and my brother, obviously, was one day I was walking to my elementary school. I was walking through the back where the playground was, and on the wall there, because there was like an off the wall, and on that wall, somebody did a throwy that had like a green lantern in the throwy. And I really liked comic books at the time. And it's being kind of conjoined with this other thing I really like, graffiti. And mentally, that kind of just clicked for me. It made sense. And while I wasn't getting up myself around that age, I was sketching and playing around with ideas and kind of just drawing letters and whatnot. But it didn't take long for graffiti to progress beyond that. Around 7th grade, life does that thing where it does every now and again, and it throws you a bit of a curveball. You hit a bit of a speed bump in life, and you hit a low. So it's at this point right here where my low became me being very violent, very aggressive towards pretty much anyone and everyone. And we all have dark spots in our life, right? It happens to everybody. And graffiti gave me a way to kind of vent some of that. And this is the case for a lot of us, right? A lot of us graffiti artists, you either get addicted to substances, whether that's alcohol or drugs, you are like, you know, kind of like I was, where you're violent, or maybe it's something else. But for a lot of us, there's some negative attribute that we have, and graffiti was like this life raft that kind of came around, and it was like, hey, you're in a low spot. Well, here's the next step in order to help get out and climb out of that hole. Now, don't get me wrong, if we imagine this like a hole that I've dug myself into, I'm at the lowest low that I've ever been at this point, and graffiti coming as a life raft is still pretty deep in that hole. It's not like I climbed out immediately, right? So it's a step up. It's a step closer out of that hole. And it's exactly what I needed around that time. Instead of getting into trouble with whatever it was, I can get into trouble with graffiti, which doesn't sound any better, especially to an outsider. You know, an outsider would hear somebody say that, and they'd say, oh, well, that's equally as stupid. But the way I saw it was, at least I'm not doing anybody any harm with this, right? Other than vandalism. But aside from that, I'm not doing anybody any harm. So I would spend all my days and I would spend my nights just staying up, once again, still drawing with, you know, the more fine art stuff, the comic book stuff as well, also graffiti. And that ate up a lot of my time. This is around the same time where I started to finally meet other graffiti artists. My brother also began taking graffiti very seriously at this time, and we formed a crew. We got, you know, little friends into it, kind of like everybody does when you very first start doing graffiti. You kind of get your closest boys into the group, and some of them fall out, sure, no big deal, but you end up meeting other people as well. And granted, they're all toys too, right? It's not like, you know, you're meeting legends at this point, but they're all still toys too. But there's a community of us now. A small one, but still a community. A community of like-minded people that I can hang out with, and once again, use graffiti as a means to get myself away from these other negative aspects of my life. Now, before we delve any further into this, I gotta let you guys know about our book that's 20% off right now. You see, we got a Black Friday sale, Cyber Monday sale going on, at theartistblock.inc, where everything is 20% off. Because of that, it's the perfect time to check out our ultimate graffiti guidebook. If you've been struggling to learn graffiti, you've been struggling to get better, you're confused and frustrated with this art form, then push all that to the side. Stop wasting that time being confused and just check out our ultimate graffiti guidebook. It's got all the information you could possibly need for graffiti's fundamentals. We're the only book on the market that teaches you each one of graffiti's basics, and we do so with hundreds of pictures that'll hold your hand through the entire process. And we go into ridiculous amounts of depth. You won't find that information anywhere else online, not in videos or other books. It's not gonna happen unless they copy me. So check out our digital ebooks at theartistblock.inc, and if you want physical copies like this one over here, we got them over on Amazon. Both of those are in the description down below. Be sure to go ahead and check it out. I also found teaching around this time. Now, at this age, I'm around 7th, 8th grade, and I begin teaching other kids in the school about graffiti. At this point, I don't really understand graffiti or the science behind it. I'm a pretty crappy teacher, right? I'm pretty terrible at teaching, but I knew more than they did because I'd been doing it since, you know, I was a kid. I'd been doing it terribly since I was a kid, but I still was sketching it as to where this was like, you know, their first day ever doing it. So this is where I also found my passion for teaching, and I did it religiously, right? It's not like I taught one or two people for a day or two and that was it. No. I taught consistently up until this point right now, and that right there was a great way for me to talk to people and learn how to communicate things clearly and learn how to express ideas clearly. Now, this right here was one of those things in life that was good for me, right? Socializing with other people and learning how to communicate, learning how to speak, getting patience, which is something I can still work on. But graffiti also kind of hurt my life in quite a few ways as well. So around high school, I met up with Demer and a few other people, a few people that would become longtime friends within graffiti. Demer taught me, you know, the basic boxes and letter structure, but it's also here where I met my fine art mentor. And my fine art mentor was a world-renowned artist who was very, 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 very famous, and he's the one who really taught me the elements of art and just the science behind how all art forms function. He's the one who gave me the understanding I needed in order to go back and teach myself graffiti. That way I can establish the fundamentals and so on and so forth and become a more effective teacher. I also start meeting gang members, I start meeting other kinds of criminals, and just because of the simple fact that you truly, I know it's a cliche, but you truly are like the 6 or 5 people that you hang around. Because I'm hanging around these types of people, I start to see my life going down that path. And I realized that that's not the life I want for myself. Graffiti almost took me down a really dark path, a lower low than when I started. And this, unfortunately, can be the case for a lot of writers. Graffiti is by no means an easy way to live your life, especially if you're getting enthralled with it and you're not staying isolated. In all honesty, staying isolated in graffiti and staying by yourself, especially if you're gonna be a hardcore writer, is probably the best way to do graffiti. Now, if you are gonna socialize, whether you're a hardcore writer or not, then it's best to socialize with good people. But what you gotta understand is the fact that we are in a community of criminals, largely speaking. That's what writers are. And criminals by nature typically aren't honest or trustworthy. So if you happen to be one of the honest ones, then you have to be doubly cautious who you hang around so that you don't get led down the wrong path, trusting people that you shouldn't trust. Now, at this time, I'm starting to take graffiti a lot more seriously, right? I'm going out to spots, I'm catching spots, so on and so forth. I'm doing the average graffiti artist thing, and that's exactly the problem. The problem was I was risking my life and risking my freedom. I've almost died many times doing graffiti, as a lot of us have. That's not exactly an unheard of, you know, thing to say for a graffiti artist. There's been times where I've fallen through the roof of a factory, and my God, did that hurt. Oh, man. I've almost gotten hit by a train. I almost got jumped by 2 naked homeless guys that were shooting up drugs, and while that's a funny story, it's not a situation I want to be in again. And these just aren't situations that you find yourself in if you have your life on track, if you're doing what's in your best interest. These aren't the situations that you really want to be in if you're already in the hole. But I realized that I'm just the average graffiti artist. I never really got up any more than anybody else around me. I didn't do anything extravagant. It's not like I hit the side of a ship or a Hollywood sign or the LA River. And I just did your typical graffiti artist thing. And I did that for over a decade. Got arrested twice for it, and what did I have to show for it? Not much. I loved doing it. It was a blast, and it got me a lot of memories. I'll tell you what, a lot of stories as well. So I got to a bit of a crossroads in my life. I got to a period where I realized, all right, I know I love teaching. I'm pretty damn good at it. I mean, I've established all of graffiti's fundamentals single-handedly. That isn't to say that you know, some some information wasn't out there, but most of it was incorrect in those early days. So I know I got teaching down, and I really enjoy teaching. I enjoy helping other people get to the skill level they want to get to. So let me go ahead and put my energy, put my time into something that I'm not average at, to focus on something that is more beneficial, not only to myself, but to others. And that's when I began focusing on teaching graffiti. That's when I stopped writing, stopped getting up, and began trying to climb out of that hole I put myself in all the way back to 7th grade. And that's kind of where we are today, right? Where I've continued going down the path of teaching, and because of you guys' support here on YouTube and because of you guys' support on the book, that's become my job at this point, and I've managed to crawl out of that hole that I was in, but it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of time. And I feel like if graffiti wasn't there to be that life raft in those early days, I likely would have gone into a much deeper hole. But what we have to be careful is the fact that graffiti, once again, as I mentioned before, can be something that digs you into a deeper hole to begin with. So even if you do have graffiti as your, figuratively speaking, life raft, you have to do well and be very attentive to the fact that it could easily lead you down into a worse part of your life. Keep in mind, we are speaking as if you do graffiti illegally, because typically that's where a lot of the rot to your life comes from. That's where a lot of the negative aspects come from, because that's where all the risk is. And being around graffiti artists means you're going to be proximal to other criminals, which is where you can get led into a life of crime in one area or another, or you can get into drugs really easily, so on and so forth. That also kind of depends on where you live. I grew up in a kind of heavily populated area as far as graffiti is concerned, so, you know, it was easy for me in that case, but maybe you guys in the country don't have that issue. But that was essentially my journey through graffiti and how it kind of not only almost made my life worse, but how it also helped in life. So guys, let me know in the comments down below, what got you into graffiti and how has it affected your life for the better or for the worse? Leave it in the comments down below. And also, dudes, we have our Black Friday sale going on right now over at theartistblock.inc. Everything is 20% off, so it's the perfect time to pick up our Ultimate Graffiti Guidebook. So if you're struggling to learn, I guarantee you that book is what you're looking for. Check out our digital ebooks over at theartistblock.inc and take advantage of our Black Friday sale over there. And if you want a physical copy, head over to Amazon. We got physical copies there for you. Got a link to both of those in the description down below. If you guys want the best how to do graffiti tutorials, check them out right over here with more graffiti content right down here, and I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.